Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Learn TV. My name is Teresa and I thank you for joining us once again on the webinar series. This webinar is sponsored by STEMacademy.io, LetslearnNG, and Brainiac STEM and Robotics. The webinar series is a platform that equips all our audience with the relevant content they need for a quick start in their career, entrepreneurship, education, technology, business, and a whole lot more. To kickstart this webinar series, I'll be having with me Mrs. Agama Jesurobo, our remarkable guest, who is a success-driven and result-oriented IT specialist. And today, again, we'll be looking at creating an effective learner engagement in virtual learning environment. So welcome once again to our amazing guest. Thank you, Mrs. Agama, for joining us once again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Teresa. It's good to be here once again.
Okay, so before we dive into today's section, please, I need you to subscribe to Let's Learn TV, because trust me, you don't want to miss all the amazing things that will be coming to you from this channel. So please click the subscribe button now and subscribe to Let's Learn TV. And after clicking the subscribe button, there's a bell button beside the subscribe button. Click on the bell button so you can be notified whenever we are live. Okay, so Ms. Agama, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay. So thank you once again for joining us, and thank you to all our amazing audience who are watching at this time. Okay, so I'll be giving Mrs. Agama the floor now so that she can start with our lecture for today. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So I'll quickly share my slide presentation. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Like I've been rightly introduced, my name is Agama Jesurobo, and today we shall be talking about effective learning engagement in virtual learning environment. Okay, so the aim of this subject is to relate with educators, to pass a message across to the educators on how they can best create an environment that fosters learning during this time of COVID, and then schools have been shut down, or they are actually on lockdown, physical classrooms. But then we are aware that a lot of schools have gone online and there is remote instruction taking place right now. So I hope that by the end of my session, my audience will be more equipped more than ever to understand how to create effective learner engagement in their virtual classrooms. So I'll be starting with learning, or let me start by defining what a virtual learning environment is. Okay, so a virtual learning environment is a technology-enabled environment for learning. Okay, there is online learning and there is remote learning. So I'll quickly talk about both of them. For online learning is learners having access to knowledge materials or course content that they consume to acquire knowledge. Whereas remote instruction or remote learning talks about virtual learning environment is our traditional enabled learning environment being moved to the cloud. Online learning, so there was remote traditional learning classroom where students I'll quickly talk about both of them, and then the lecturers. For online learning, is learners online having access remote to knowledge materials or content. The lecturer and the student had a to acquire knowledge relationship, whereas from a traditional classroom or remote learning online space talks about so now virtual learning environment is our traditional enabled learning environment, web-based platform being moved to the cloud. Online learning, so there was of learning, traditional classroom where students I'll quickly talk about both of them. And then the lecturers for online learning what learning has learners online, like I said earlier, remote. So I've talked about the lecturer and the instruction and then online learning, but we need to also look at effective learning. And why do I talk about effective learning? Okay, in our traditional teaching environment, teaching and learning environment, we understand the nuances. We have been on it for centuries. Okay, and then it has been measured, evaluated, and seen that learning effectively takes place within a classroom. But now that we have gone online, there's a lot of concern as to whether the impact is still the same, whether we can still confidently say that our learners are learning or our students are learning in the virtual space. So talking about that or referring to that brings us to the issue of effective learning. So how can we say that learning is effective? Now, we can talk about effective learning when we look at the purpose for which learning has been designed. So while we talk about the purpose for which learning has been designed, that brings us to what are the possible outcomes that we hope to get from a learning scenario. So for us to be able to show that, we must be able to show how connected the learning is and how our learners are able to apply the knowledge that they have gained. So when we talk about effective learning in a virtual learning environment, we need to consider the outcomes and the objectives that has been set. We need to evaluate these outcomes and objectives, and we need to know how these learners have moved from a state of maybe little knowledge on a particular subject to advanced knowledge, or from little knowledge to maybe intermediate level and then to advanced knowledge. And then we need to know this learning, this knowledge that has been passed on, how have they been able to understand it? Are they able to synthesize this? And after that, are they able to apply what they have learned? And how are they going to use that which they have gained in a more complex environment? So learning is not just for a particular subject. A learner must be able to apply it to complexity surrounding that subject matter. That's what effective learning is all about. So now we also need to look at, okay, so what is this knowledge for? When do we say this person or this learner has achieved learning? When do we say this learning has taken place? Now, what is this knowledge effective for? How do we measure all that? So all that are the factors that we look at. Those are the elements we look at when we talk about effective learning. Now, if we can't talk about effective learning without talking about learner engagement. Learner engagement is very key. Learner engagement is one of the components of a learning environment. It's one of the components of a learning environment, such that it measures the quantity and the quality of a learner's participation in the subject that is being taught and how it relates, like I said earlier, to how they can apply it to complexities surrounding a subject matter, beg your pardon. Also, for we to say a learner is engaged in a virtual classroom, we also need to talk about how active is the learner. Now, we can't talk about a learner activity or a learner being active without talking about a learner being engaged. The learner engagement is on the part of the educator to ensure that every learner in a class or every student in a class is being not just adequately engaged, but engaged in ways that suits the learning style of the learner. Okay, so if we have learners who are more inclined to visuals, do we have materials that can suit such a learner? If we have students who are impaired of hearing, do we ensure that whatever material we have also has the video component of it? If there are learners in the class who peradventure can't see, do we have materials that they can listen to? we need to put all that into consideration when we talk about learner engagement. So we can't talk about learner engagement without looking at the different mediums that we can use to engage different categories of learners. So now, from what I said earlier, we can see that there are different factors that can impact student success in a learning environment. Okay, I talked about audio visuals initially. That also has to do with the learning styles. Okay, different people have different attention span. Okay, and if we don't have materials that can cater to such people, or if we don't have materials in forms that can meet the demands of such people, meet their needs, then that virtual classroom will not be an inclusive one. Some people will be left behind. Okay, so for instance, if we have a virtual classroom that it's mainly like a real-time communication where they go on a video call, and then once the session is over, that's the end. Okay, there will be people who cannot memorize easily. There'll be people who need to go back to the material. Such people, if we don't have material, if we don't have that recording, for instance, that is kept somewhere in an archive, such that people who need to go back to that material will be able to also have access to them, then that virtual learning environment will not be so effective, will not be inclusive, as some people will be definitely left behind. Also, we talk about technology. How are people familiar with this technology? These are factors that can impact student success. How familiar are learners with the technology that is being used to deliver the remote courses? It is not just about how familiar the students are, it's also, do these students have access to this material? Okay, and if they have access, this material, how does it meet the requirements for the online instruction? All those are factors that should be considered when designing a virtual learning environment for learners. Also, I've talked about the learning style and the classroom setting. Now, the technology and the tuition, is it affordable? Okay, especially in climate. How are learners able to, or how are parents or guardians of learners able to afford the cost of online course delivery or online learning for their words? Okay, it's not enough for this content to be available. It also needs to be affordable in such a way that they can all access it. Now, I've talked about pacing. By pacing, I mean putting materials in a form that students can always go back to them. That is also related to the attention span. Okay, if people who can't pay attention for a long time, or people who cannot assimilate as fast as others in a classroom, if we put them together in a class and deliver content in such a way, in a uniform manner, some people may be left behind, because we also need to acknowledge that not everybody assimilates at the same rate. And in that case, there needs to be an avenue for people who will need to go back to these materials to go back to them at their own pace. Not, you can't rush everybody within a classroom or within a virtual learning space. It's not possible. People need to be able to learn at their own pace, depending on how best they learn. So those are some of the factors that can impact student success in a virtual learning environment. And so when we talk about these impacts, these factors, we're also going to talk about how do we ensure, or how do we counter this? How do we mitigate such occurrences that some students are not learning and others are learning effectively? How do we do that? So I'll go to my next slide. Okay, so it says, how can we make learning effective in a virtual learning environment? You can see from my slide, the first thing I noted was to demonstrate empathy. Now, it's not enough for a lecturer to schedule a class, and once it's time for the session, just goes ahead to say, good morning, class. Today we are taking, excuse me, sir. There could be someone who was forced at that point in time to come online. There could be someone not feeling fine and all that. So the instructor needs to demonstrate empathy in a virtual learning environment, taking into consideration the fact that you are not able to actually physically see these learners, and maybe by the look on their faces, tell if something is wrong. Okay, that's very easy to tell. That's much more easy to tell in a traditional classroom. But in a virtual learning environment, no, that's not. And then we're not going to throw empathy to the wind and just get it on like the kids don't matter or like the learners don't matter. It's important that at the beginning of the class, you feel the pulse of the learners, albeit in a virtual form or in a technology-enabled way. Okay, so you can ask a simple question, or you can send a message and say, everyone, how are you doing today? Or you can also say, everyone turn on your camera, at least let the classmates or the learners see one another in their class. Because we can't rule away the fact that some of our learners at this point miss their classmates. They have been out of school for months. It's not okay to just be in an environment and once they come together again, they are learning. When they were during the traditional mode of delivery, they had break sessions where they could relate. They come to the class, they could hug themselves and all that. So we can replicate that in a way that technology enables us to. So we can put a message across. We can tell the students to turn on the camera. You could dedicate a few minutes, say 1 or 2 minutes, to just have them chit chat amongst themselves, and then you start your lesson for the day. So that's very important. That's very key. That will also help to liven the environment and prepare their minds as well. The next item there is to flip the classroom. Now, in the traditional delivery mode, we had the teachers or instructors go to class, and then once they get to class, they start teaching the subject or the course content for the day. In a virtual learning environment, that will not be so effective, okay? Because there are different factors that are in play, or there are different nuances to this. The lecturer or the instructor needs to be able to provide course content beforehand, such that the learners can access these materials, go through them, and then when they come to class, it becomes an interactive session. It won't be just a one-way thing. Okay, it won't be the instructor just being like a sage on the stage, pouring it all out to the learners. It will be, although instructor-led, it will be an environment for interaction. And then they can bring in their own perspectives, they can ask questions. And when they ask questions, other people or other learners in the classroom, in the virtual learning environment, can also learn 1 or 2 things from those interactions. So it's not okay in a virtual learning environment to stick to the traditional mode of delivery, of coming to class and then dishing out your content. You need to flip the classroom as an instructor. You need to send your materials beforehand for your learners to go through, so that when you come together during a live session, it will be interactive. And then that will also help the learners to gain deeper understanding of the subjects at hand. So, okay, so I wrote, create a structured outline for your course. That's also very important. And so that will also help the students know how the work is flowing. It will prepare their mind. So if you have a structured outline for your course, say topic by topic, that will help the students know where they are now and where they are going to. And also, if they need to study beforehand, even beyond what is being taught in class, it will help them for their own independent study, not waiting to follow. Because like I said earlier, some people assimilate faster. So if you have learners in the class who assimilate really fast, it's no point holding them back by giving them only what they need at a particular time. You may not give them the whole course content, but allowing them to know this is how this course is going to flow till the end of this, till the end of the course or till the end of the semester or the term, it helps them to also walk along. Okay. So incorporating videos. Now video is very effective, okay, for in a virtual learning environment. Videos are effective. Videos replicate the instructor in the class teaching or instructing the students. It's very important. It's not okay to just send your course content or your class material as a PDF and that's all. That's not okay. Okay. Videos are very important. It helps the learner to see you. It helps them to hear you, and that creates some effects which promotes learning for users. And in using videos, it is important that we consider the fact that most of our learners, or it is important for instructors to consider that bandwidth is an issue. And so when preparing videos for classes, instead of having a downloadable video of 300 megabytes at once, dear instructor, it's better to have these videos in chunks, in small formats. So instead of having a 1-hour lecture, you can have them in, say, minimum of 15 minutes, okay? And it will also help learners who have to deal with their attention span. It will also help such learners. And if at the end of each video, you pose a question, okay, it will not just help them to evaluate or to measure their comprehension of what they have gone through. It will also spur them on to other videos to know, okay, so this is it and what could be in the next one and all that. So videos are important. It's important to record your session. So even if you use pre-recorded videos or you record your real-time interaction with the students, you could do it that way. You could create a pre-recorded video and then share to the class, or you could have a real-time video interaction with the students and then record it so the student can always go back to it. Okay, so the next thing on the slide there is to schedule virtual office hours. Okay, virtual office hours simulates the staff room office hours for instructors in the traditional delivery mode. So it's like 1 hour or 2 hours every day where you are online and then the learners come online and then ask you questions. It could be via video interaction, it could be via text. Okay, so the goal is to ensure that a lecturer is available or an instructor is available, okay, to attend to the demands or to the needs of the students. So they are not just left on their own. When they have questions, they know that they can always access the instructor and then ask questions. Okay, so the next there is the use of games. Okay, games are very effective for learning concepts, and research has shown that there's about 25% increase, okay, for learners in comprehension or understanding of concepts when they learn using games. So gamification is very key to effective learning in a virtual learning environment. And not just in a virtual learning environment, gamification is actually very key in a learning environment. And it's even more important now in a virtual learning environment. And so it's lecturers or instructors can look for games, okay, if the lecturer is not so skilled to develop games for different concepts of his or her course, you can look for games that would aid the understanding of subjects of subjects that are being taught. And then when I talk about gamification, it's easy for instructors to think that the game has to be technology enabled. It has to be like an app on a phone or on a laptop that they can play. No. Okay, so when we talk about games, instructors can also develop gamified concepts for teaching. Okay, you could think about materials that are not hard to get, and then draw out the concept for the game, and then have these children or the learners actually practice using this. So it is not just technology based. When I talk about gamification in virtual learning environment or gamification for effective learning, it is not just technology based. There are other games that a lecturer can think of, can create these games. It doesn't have to be in quotes, it doesn't have to be tush. As long as students are able to play this game and understand the concept that is being taught, then it's okay. Okay, so I've talked about that, and the next year is to use modules to deliver content in meaningful chunks. Okay, I talked about that when I mentioned to incorporate videos. Now, so instead of having a bulk material in bulk, within a subject area, we have topics, and even within topics, we have subtopics. So we can have them in chunks, we can have them in modules. And then once that module is completed, we then add formative assessments to it. So for every module, we can have formative assessment. And the importance of the formative assessment is to assess the learner if they have understood that singular module that has been studied. So if he doesn't, or if a learner cannot understand that module, there is no point going to the next module. So formative assessments, they are also very key to effective learning in a virtual learning environment, just as they are also key in the classroom or in a traditional classroom, but even more key in the virtual learning environment, because it helps the lecturer to understand how well the students are actually following. It helps the lecturer understand how well the students are following. So use modules, and then at the end of the module, you cap it with a formative assessment. It doesn't have to be too many questions. It could just be two questions that are key in that module. And you know that once a learner understands these concepts, the learner can progress to the next module. Okay, so the next there is to use quizzes for diagnostics. Okay, it's also similar to the one above, to use formative assessment. You use quizzes for diagnostics. Now, in apps such as Zoom, Teams, and you can have, even while you're having like a you're having a real-time interaction with your students, you can have a quiz. Okay, so you can just have a quiz there, ask them questions and ask people to answer. And if you look at their feedback, that will help you know if the students are following you or not. And also, when these quizzes pops up during a class, it kind of, for those who may not have been paying attention, kind of brings them back to the classroom, like, oh, okay, so there's actually a test, And so if they're probably not paying attention, that kind of brings them back into the classroom and enables them to join. That helps you carry everyone along in the classroom. And that's what I've explained here, which is similar to the add live polls to get feedback. So I just talked about that. Okay, so the next there is group discussions. Group discussions are very, very key. Okay, and in group discussions, that brings in the element of collaboration. Okay, and then if you put your learners in group, similar to using and have them talk about similar to the they brainstorm together to get feedback. So okay, they get to ask questions. Okay, so the next there is group they get to contribute to certain topics. Very, very. And then if after your group discussion, and an instructor can group discussions, at the end of the group discussion, element of collaboration. Someone in the group collate, and then if you put your learners from everyone in that group and have them talk about different that brings it encourages teamwork, brainstorm together, okay, and then okay, they get to ask questions. Okay, so the next there is group they get to contribute to certain topics. Very, very. And then if after your group discussion, and an instructor can group discussions, at the end of the group discussion, element of collaboration. Someone in the group collate, and then if you put your learners from everyone in that group and have them talk about similar different, that brings in it encourages teamwork, brainstorm together, okay, and then okay, they get to ask questions. Okay, so the next learner actually they get to apply build to certain topics. Very, very. So and then if after your group discussion and subject and lecturer can discussions at the end of about the creative ways someone in the group could be applied. If you and now not your learners from everyone in that and have them talk about similar different, that brings in it encourages teamwork, brainstorm together, and for some courses that are not ask questions. Okay, so the next learner actually they get to you can have this discussion on certain topics. Very, very. And then if after your explaining and subject and lecturer can decide that there are some courses that think about the element ways someone in the group could be applied. If you and now not your learners from everyone in that and by doing that similar different that brings them to actually measure teamwork, brainstorm together, and for some courses that are not ask questions. Okay, so when learners actually they asking you can apply discussion on certain topics. They are also and then if after your new knowledge and subject and lecturer can decide that some courses that think about the element ways someone in the can apply. So these are some of the ways that effective learning can be fostered in a virtual learning environment. And let's not agree or let's not have the notion that learning cannot be effective in a virtual learning environment. It can be effective in a virtual learning environment if the right practices are put in place, or if the right things are put in place and the right practices are followed, then learning can be just as effective as it is in a traditional classroom environment. So I don't know if there are any questions for now. I'll be glad to take them.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Agama. I learned a whole lot from that section, and I believe we'll be taking a quick commercial before we get back. And please, if you have questions, please begin to, type in your question and send them in so that we can start to collate and take them. So we're going for a quick commercial now. We have some questions for you, Mr. Agama, and we'll start taking them now. Mr. Agama, are you there? Hello, Mr. Agama.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
We have some questions for you, Mr. Agama. You can please turn on your video back so that we can see you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you once again for that very insightful section. Okay. So please, if you still have questions as part of our audience, please send your question. But now we have a question here. It says, can you give examples of gaming concepts that we can use while teaching? Like that's in the class.
Okay, so we can use, can you see me? Oh, okay.
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, so we can use like the Lego series concept. Okay, so we have like the Legos and the like building blocks. They can build blocks, as that's a good concept depending on the subject that is being taught. Okay, and also we can use like songs. Okay, that's a concept that can be employed as well in a classroom. It's a game, it could be like a trick that involves a song, but those are concepts that can be incorporated in a classroom. And also in designing game concepts, it is important that we look at what are we trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve? That will inform the kind of concepts that you will use. And also, if you also look at what kind of learners do you have, you will know the game concept that will be more effective for the children in that class.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for that. Because for me, while you were speaking, one of the things that stood out for me was the subject of, gamification. And you talked about the fact that it doesn't have to be technology based. Because,
Yes.
sometimes when you mention gamification, most people feel like, oh, we have to design an app and all. But just as you said, there are ways we can start to apply these things to our immediate environment. Okay, so I have a question for you before we wrap up today. And please, if you still have a question, please do well to send it in. Yeah, so I wanted to ask that some of these things you have talked about and you've explained to us, is it only for maybe those who are educators? Can people who maybe they are not teaching per se, but they are just online speakers, can they also apply some of these principles? And if they can, what specific advice can you give to such kind of persons who are not maybe talking to a class directly in that sense?
Okay, so if I understand you well, you are referring to people who are not educators per se.
Yes.
Certified educators, but they get to train people or get to
teach. Or they speak
people.
in maybe an online event or something of that nature.
Okay, so I'll say that now that's where we talk about the objective. What's the objective? We have to consider it's very key to consider the objective. So if the objective, for instance, I may be talking to an audience and the aim is to entertain. It's different from talking to an audience with the aim to get them to learn something. Okay, so that is a factor that will determine if all I have listed can be used. Okay, so if you are talking to an audience to entertain them, by all means, you may need them to be active such that they are laughing to your jokes or something, but they don't necessarily need to take anything away from it except being happy. So that will inform the principles that you apply. But if you are talking to an audience that are not necessarily within a formal learning environment, but then you are training them and it's within a virtual environment, by all means, these principles apply, because the goal is for you to be able to impart knowledge to them and for them to be able to use the knowledge that they have gained. So you need to employ those principles.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really do agree that, because if I had to take notes while you were speaking, because some of the things we're saying are things that are applicable across any virtual engagement. Okay, so we still have some questions here. One says, I don't have any experience teaching the virtual classes. Where can I get this knowledge?
Okay, to get knowledge on teaching a virtual learning class, for an educator who has been taking classes in the traditional learning environment, I would say reflect on what you do within your traditional classroom. And then think about how you can creatively replicate this in a virtual space. And so in terms of getting maybe training materials to increase your knowledge, there are a lot of materials online which you can have access to. And then if we also look at, if you go on YouTube, you also find a lot of videos reflect that are not just on what you do. And also there are also some certificate courses that you can take. So if you decide on the platform that you want to use for training, then you can also look for materials that can help you better facilitate using those platforms. And of course, I believe that if they consult you at Brainiacs, they should be able to get a head start on how to go about it.
Thank you. I was actually going to add that to that. I mean, that's why we are here at Let's Learn TV. So you can always reach out to us. You can send an email and we'll definitely give you some, head starts to help you get on with this. Because we actually have an academy at stemacademy.io where we focus on this. Okay, so the second question here says, you mentioned giving extra activities to my learners, especially to the bright ones. Can you explain this part again?
Okay. So I said students learn at different pace and some are fast learners. So instead of holding them back to stay where you are, or like, you can't go beyond this module, wait for the others, giving them your course outline or telling them, okay, this is what we plan to cover during the course of this term or this semester, can help them move ahead and then start learning independently on their own. And they could also become peer educators, teaching their fellow students, and that enriches the learning experience in the class. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, I think you did. Okay, so for now, we don't have any more questions here. And just to, highlight some things that really stood out for me while you were teaching, I already talked about the gamification. I also looked at the fact where you said that, we can't say there's effective learning if there are no specific parameters, to measure the learning by. And I think
has taken place.
Exactly. I think that's so key because, instead of just generalizing and just concluding that, okay, everybody, maybe because the kids were smiling or something, or your audience were sort of happy with you, having specific parameters to check to be sure that, okay, this and effective learning has taken place.
Yes.
I think
and then there are some schools now that use WhatsApp, okay, because they want to provide content for their students while they're at home, and then they use WhatsApp. If they are just providing this content via WhatsApp without interacting with the student and actually measuring that learning has taken place, then it's possible that a huge number of children who are at home during this lockdown are not learning, and that is increasing the learning gap that has already been there. And so schools need to employ learning management systems that are actually built to encourage effective learning, where they have different modules that are put in place. The teachers can use different tools, and then the learners have access to these tools as well to ensure that they are not just getting content or they are not just receiving materials, but they are actually engaging with these materials. They are being evaluated to be sure that learning is taking place.
Wow. I mean, this has been so insightful for me, and I believe our audience have also taken a lot of points that they are going to start working on. So thank you so much, Ms. Agama, for joining us. Our time is fast spent, but I mean, it has been well spent. So thank you so much for, sharing so much knowledge and light with us, and, explaining a whole lot of things and clarifying things so that people who have questions of, can we, replicate an effective learning environments online? I think you've really answered that so much, and we're so grateful that you have done this with us. And okay, I want to thank everyone who has joined us for this section. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us in this webinar series. You can always watch this section again on YouTube, so that things that, just as she mentioned while she was teaching us, that sometimes you have to go over some of our learners or our students have to go over the things we have taught again. That's why we should have, videos and all of that they can watch at their own pace. So I want to encourage you that you still take time out to go over this video again and pick out things that you're going to start applying. Joined us for this section. Thank you so much for taking time out. Please do well to subscribe to Let's Learn TV so you don't miss any of the amazing things we have for you. And do well to join us next week again. We'll be having the webinar series on Thursday and the Women in STEM on Tuesday. So once again, I want to appreciate our sponsor, STEMacademy.io. Please do well to check them out on the internet. They have an amazing hub for content that would keep you engaged throughout this period. We have LetslearnNG. There are a lot of materials there, books, kits. Just trust me, many of the things she mentioned, you can actually find them on these platforms. Especially if you are looking at, engaging maybe your kids or your student or whatever, just do well to check out this platform. And also, we want to really appreciate Brainiac STEM and Robotics, the Innovation Epicenter. And once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this section. And we do hope to see you all in our next section. And thank you once again, Ms. Agama, for joining us. And
thank you for having me. It's been a great time.
Yeah, thank you. And do have an amazing week. Yeah, bye, everyone.
Bye.